The space station Harmony Prime floated in the darkness between three star systems. It was the largest structure ever built by living beings. More than 50,000 people lived there. Diplomats, traders, scientists, and workers from dozens of different alien species walked through its long metal hallways every day. Park stood at the window of the arrival deck and watched the stars. She was 34 years old, with short black hair and calm dark eyes. She wore simple gray clothes, just a sweater and comfortable pants. Her formal ambassador uniform was somewhere in her lost luggage, floating on a cargo ship that had taken a wrong turn near the Orion Belt. She did not look like an important person. She looked like someone who might work in an office or a school. This was fine with her. Had learned long ago that people showed their true nature when they thought no one important was watching. Today was her first day as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. She had trained for 7 years for this job. She had 3 doctorate degrees. She had ended a war between 2 alien species by talking to them for 11 days without sleep. But none of that mattered right now. Right now, she was just hungry. Walked through the station until she found the main cafeteria. It was a huge room with a high ceiling made of glass. Through the glass, she could see a purple nebula glowing in the distance. Hundreds of tables filled the space. Aliens of all shapes and sizes sat eating and talking. She saw creatures with blue skin and 6 eyes. She saw beings made of living crystal that chimed when they moved. She saw tall, insect-like people with wings folded against their backs. And she saw humans too, engineers, traders, and workers who had come to the station seeking opportunity. Got in line for food. The cafeteria served meals for over 200 different species. The smell was strange but not unpleasant. She selected some rice, vegetables, and a piece of fish that looked mostly normal. As she carried her tray to find a seat, she noticed an old alien struggling nearby. He was of a species that looked like tall, thin birds with silver feathers and gentle golden eyes. This one was very old. His feathers had turned white, and his hands shook as he tried to carry his tray. The tray slipped. Food splattered across the floor. The old made a sad chirping sound and bent down slowly to clean the mess. Set her own tray on a nearby table and walked over to help. She knelt beside him and began picking up the fallen dishes. "Please let me help you," she said softly. The old looked at her with surprise. "You are kind, young human. Most people just walk past." "Most people are in too much of a hurry," said. She smiled at him. "I am not in a hurry today." She helped him stand and guided him to a chair. Then she went back to the food line and prepared a fresh tray for him. She remembered reading that enjoyed sweet fruits and warm grain, so she selected those carefully. She brought the tray to his table and sat across from him. "Tell me about your home world," she said. "I have always wanted to visit." The old diplomat's eyes brightened. For the next 20 minutes, he told her about the singing forests of his planet, where the trees made music when the wind blew through them. He told her about the floating cities built on clouds of magnetic dust. He told her about his, who were learning to fly for the first time. Listened to every word. She asked questions. She laughed at his jokes. For that brief time, she was not an ambassador or a politician. She was simply a person sharing a meal with another person. Neither of them noticed the tall figure watching from across the room. High Delegate of the Imperium stood near the cafeteria entrance with her arms crossed. She was 8 feet tall with dark purple skin and 4 muscular arms. Her species was one of the most powerful in the galaxy. They had conquered 12 star systems and commanded the largest military fleet outside of Earth's territory. Believed in strength and hierarchy. In her culture, every person had a place. The strong ruled, the weak served. There was no room for sentiment or kindness. These things were weaknesses. She watched the human woman helping the old and felt disgust. Humans were newcomers to the galactic stage. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 80 years ago. 2. They were like children playing in the world of adults, useful for manual labor perhaps, good for filling jobs that other species did not want, nothing more. Was hungry. She strode across the cafeteria toward the human woman, her heavy boots making the floor vibrate with each step. Aliens moved quickly out of her way. Everyone knew the and their temper. She stopped in front of and looked down at her, had just finished saying goodbye to the old. Human said, her voice was deep and cold. You work here, yes, in this food place. Looked up at the towering alien. She saw the expensive jewelry on its 4 wrists. She saw the symbol of the High Council on her chest. She understood immediately who this was and what she was assuming. Could have corrected her. She could have introduced herself as Ambassador Park of the United Earth Federation. She could have made feel foolish in front of everyone. Instead, she simply smiled politely. How may I help you? Asked. Snapped 2 of her fingers. Fetch me food, the finest cuts of meat you have, and be quick about it. Your kind is only good for simple work like this. Do not waste my time. Several nearby aliens turned to watch. Some looked uncomfortable. Others seemed curious about how the human would react to such rudeness. Stood up slowly. Her expression remained calm and pleasant. Of course, she said. Please wait here. I will bring you something special. She walked to the food preparation area. She spent 10 minutes selecting the finest ingredients. She arranged them beautifully on a plate, using techniques she had learned while studying culture. The presentation was perfect, exactly how a noble would expect to be served at a royal banquet. She brought the plate too, and set it down with a small bow. I hope this meets your expectations, said. Looked at the plate. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes, surprise perhaps at the quality of the presentation, but she said nothing. She did not thank the human. She simply began to eat. Walked away without another word. She collected her own cold tray of food and found a quiet corner to eat alone. Tomorrow, she thought, would be very interesting. The Grand Assembly Hall was the heart of Harmony Prime. It was a massive circular room that could hold 10,000 beings. The ceiling was a dome of living light that changed colors to match the mood of the speakers. Today it glowed a calm blue, but everyone knew that could change quickly. High Delegate sat in the front row of the section. She wore her finest armor, black metal decorated with gold symbols of her family's conquests. Her 4 arms rested on the armrests of her chair, and she looked around the room with the confidence of someone who expected to win. Today was the annual Trade Summit. Representatives from 47 species had gathered to discuss shipping routes, trade agreements, and economic partnerships. Had spent 6 months preparing a proposal that would change everything. Her plan was simple. She wanted to restrict human shipping routes through the central galaxy. This would force human traders to take longer paths between stars. It would cost them time and money. It would make them weaker, and it would make the Imperium stronger. Believed this proposal would pass easily. She had already made deals with 15 other species. She had promised them favorable trade terms in exchange for their votes. The humans were too new, too weak, and too unimportant to stop her. The great bell rang 3 times. The assembly was beginning. Elder Consul walked to the central platform. He was an old human man with white hair and a kind face. He had served on the Galactic Council for 40 years. Every species respected him for his fairness and wisdom. Welcome, representatives of the galaxy, said. His voice was soft but carried clearly through the hall. Today we discuss matters of trade and cooperation. May wisdom guide our words. The first few hours passed slowly. Minor species presented small proposals, trade routes were adjusted, taxes were discussed, grew bored and impatient. Finally, her turn came. She stood and walked to the central platform. The ceiling lights shifted to a deeper blue as she began to speak. She presented her proposal with confidence. She spoke of efficiency and order. She spoke of the need to organize shipping lanes properly. She never mentioned that her real goal was to hurt the humans. She was too clever for that. When she finished, she looked around the room with satisfaction. Many delegates were nodding. Her allies were ready to vote. "Thank you," High Delegate said. "Now we will hear the response from the United Earth Federation. Representing humanity, Ambassador Park." Turned to watch the human delegation. She expected some nervous junior diplomat. She expected someone easy to defeat. The crowd parted, and a woman walked toward the platform. Felt her foreheart stop. It was the cafeteria worker. But she was not wearing simple gray clothes anymore. She wore the formal white and blue uniform of an Earth ambassador. Gold medals hung on her chest. The symbol of the United Earth Federation, a blue planet surrounded by stars, glowed on her shoulder. Park walked with calm confidence. Her eyes met for just a moment. There was no anger in them, no mockery, just quiet acknowledgement. Stepped onto the platform and faced the assembly. "Thank you, Elder Consul," she said. Her voice was clear and steady. "And thank you, High Delegate, for your proposal. You speak of efficiency. You speak of order. These are good things, but I believe we can do better." She touched a button, and a holographic map of the galaxy appeared above her. Stars glowed like diamonds against the darkness. Shipping routes were marked in lines of light. "The High Delegate's proposal would indeed create order," continued. "But it would create order that benefits only a few. 12 smaller species would lose access to major trade routes. The Crystalline Collective, the people of the Nebula Moons, all of them would suffer." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Delegates from those species leaned forward to listen. "I propose something different," said. "An open shipping corridor through the central galaxy, free passage for all species, shared maintenance costs, equal access to the richest trading zones." She changed the holographic display. New routes appeared, routes that connected everyone, that left no one behind. "This is not just about trade," said. "This is about what kind of galaxy we want to live in. Do we want a galaxy where the strong crush the weak? Or do we want a galaxy where we lift each other up?" Stood frozen in her seat. She could not believe what was happening. The cafeteria worker, no, the ambassador, was destroying her proposal with simple words and a better idea. One of his allies, a delegate from the Merchant Guild, raised his hand. "Ambassador Park, you speak well, but what are your qualifications? You are young. Humanity is young. Why should we trust your judgment?" Smiled slightly. "A fair question. I hold 3 doctorate degrees in interstellar economics and comparative cultural studies. I served for 7 years as captain of the research vessel Horizon, where I led first contact missions with 4 new species. And 5 years ago, I negotiated the Cygnus Peace Accord, which ended a war that had lasted 2 centuries." The hall fell silent. Even had heard of the Cygnus Peace Accord. 2 species had been killing each other for generations. Millions had died, and a young human woman had convinced them to stop. "I do not ask you to trust me because of these things," continued. "I ask you to trust the idea. Look at the proposal. Study the numbers. See for yourselves that cooperation is better than competition." She bowed slightly and stepped back from the platform. The voting would not happen until tomorrow. Delegates needed time to review both proposals, but as looked around the room she could see the change. The smaller species were talking excitedly. Her allies looked uncertain. The momentum had shifted. Sat back in her chair and stared at the human woman who had served her lunch yesterday. How had she not seen it? How had she missed the intelligence in those calm, dark eyes? How had she been so blind? For the first time in her life, High Delegate of the Imperium felt something she had never felt before. She felt foolish. And she did not like it at all. The assembly ended for the day. Delegates filed out of the great hall, talking and arguing, was surrounded by representatives from the smaller species, thanking her for speaking on their behalf. Watched from a distance, her 4 hands clenched into fists. This was not over. The human had embarrassed her. She had made look like a fool. In culture, such insults could not go unanswered. There would be consequences. Turned and walked out of the hall, already planning her next move. The corridor outside the assembly hall was quiet. Most delegates had returned to their quarters to rest and think about tomorrow's vote. The lights had dimmed to simulate evening, and shadows gathered in the corners. Walked alone toward her room. Her feet were tired from standing for so long, and her mind was busy thinking about the speech she had given. Had she said enough? Had she said too much? Politics was like a game of chess, and she was never sure if she had made the right move until the game was over. She turned a corner and stopped. High Delegate stood in the middle of the corridor, blocking her path. The tall purple alien's forearms were crossed, and her yellow eyes burned with cold anger. Two guards stood behind her, their hands resting on their weapons. Ambassador Park said, her voice echoed off the metal walls. "We need to talk." Showed no fear. She had faced angry aliens before. She had faced pirates, warlords, and kings. A politician with hurt feelings was not going to scare her. "Of course, High Delegate," said pleasantly. "How can I help you?" Took a step closer. She was so tall that had to look up to meet her eyes. Most humans would have stepped back, did not move. "You humiliated me," said through clenched teeth. "In the cafeteria, you let me believe you were a servant. You let me treat you like nothing. And then you revealed yourself in front of everyone." "I never lied to you," replied calmly. "You asked if I worked there. I asked how I could help you. You assumed. I simply did not correct your assumption." "That is the same as lying." "No," said, "it is not. You saw a human in simple clothes and decided she must be a servant. That was your choice, your assumption, your mistake. I am not responsible for the stories you tell yourself." His four hands curled into fists. For a moment, thought the alien might actually hit her. The guards behind tensed, ready to act. But was not stupid. Attacking an ambassador in a public corridor would cause a diplomatic disaster. Instead, she took a deep breath and straightened her shoulders. "In my culture," said slowly, "insults must be answered. You have shamed me before the entire council. I demand satisfaction." Raised an eyebrow. "You are challenging me to a duel." "Yes, it is my right under law." "Law does not apply to me. I am human." Smiled coldly. "But Galactic Council law does. Article 7, Section 4. Any delegate may challenge another to formal resolution of grievances. The challenged party may choose the format. I am challenging you, Ambassador Park. Do you accept or do you hide behind excuses?" Was quiet for a moment. She knew about Article 7. She had studied every law of the Galactic Council. She also knew that refusing a formal challenge would make her look weak. The smaller species who had supported her today would lose confidence. Her proposal might fail. And there was something else, something deeper. Believed that problems should be faced, not avoided. Running away never solved anything. If wanted a confrontation, then a confrontation she would get. "I accept," said. Looked surprised. She had expected the human to refuse, to make excuses, to find some way out. Humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to be afraid of the... "You accept," repeated. "Yes, and as the challenged party I choose the format," smiled slightly. "I choose diplomatic trial by inquiry." Now looked confused. "I do not know this format." "It is an ancient council tradition," explained. "Both parties stand before neutral judges and answer questions about each other's cultures, history, art, values, traditions. The one who demonstrates greater understanding and respect wins the trial." That is not a real duel. There is no fighting, no test of strength. There are many kinds of strength, High Delegate. Physical power is only one. Knowledge is another. Understanding is another. Are you afraid to test those kinds of strength? His eyes narrowed. She was being manipulated. She knew it. But she could not back down now. If she refused this format, she would look like a coward. "Fine," said, "I accept your format. We will have this trial." "Wonderful," said, "I suggest we hold it tomorrow evening after the trade vote. The whole station can watch, unless you would prefer something more private." "No," growled, "let everyone watch. Let them see how easily I defeat you." "Then it is settled," bowed politely. "I look forward to it, High Delegate. Now, if you will excuse me, I need to rest. It has been a long day." She walked past without looking back. The guards moved aside to let her pass, stood in the corridor watching her go. One of the guards leaned close to, "High Delegate, this trial. Do you know anything about human culture?" Did not answer. She was beginning to realize that she had made a terrible mistake. She knew nothing about humans. She had never bothered to learn. Why would she? They were just servants and workers, newcomers who did not matter. She had never read their history. She had never listened to their music. She did not know their holidays or heroes or dreams. Meanwhile, the human ambassador had served her food in the exact style of a royal banquet. She had known exactly how to present the meal, exactly how the plate should look. That meant she had studied culture. She had learned. Felt a cold fear growing in her stomach. She had challenged a human to a contest of knowledge and understanding. And she had no idea how much that human actually knew. Back in her quarters, sat on her bed and allowed herself a small smile. She felt a little guilty for enjoying this so much, but not too guilty. Had been rude and arrogant. She had insulted humans as a species. She had tried to hurt 12 smaller civilizations just to make herself more powerful. Some lessons could only be learned the hard way. Opened her computer and began reviewing her notes on culture. She had studied them for years, but she wanted to be prepared. Tomorrow she would show the galaxy something important. She would show them that humans did not win by being the strongest or the richest or the most powerful. Humans won by caring enough to understand. And that was a strength that had never even considered. The trade vote happened in the morning. It was not even close. Open shipping corridor proposal won by a margin of 31-16. The smaller species had united behind her plan, and even some of former allies had changed their votes. But everyone knew the real event was coming that evening. Word of the diplomatic trial had spread across the station like fire. By sunset, more than 5,000 beings had gathered in the Grand Assembly Hall to watch. Millions more were watching through broadcasts sent to every corner of the galaxy. This was more than a contest between two diplomats. This was a test of two civilizations. The hall looked different tonight. Instead of rows of seats, there was a raised circular platform in the center. Two chairs faced each other across a small table. Above them, giant screens floated in the air, ready to show everything to the watching crowd. Elder Consul stood at the edge of the platform. He had agreed to serve as the neutral arbiter of the trial. His white hair glowed in the soft lights, and his face was serious but kind. "Tonight we witness an ancient tradition," announced. "Two representatives will demonstrate their knowledge of each other's cultures. This is not a test of memory alone. It is a test of respect, of curiosity, of the willingness to see another being as worthy of understanding." He gestured to the left, representing the Imperium High Delegate. Walked onto the platform. She had changed her armor for something lighter, but she still moved with the confidence of a warrior. Her yellow eyes scanned the crowd, looking for weakness. She sat in her chair and waited. Representing the United Earth Federation, Ambassador Park entered from the other side. She wore the same simple white and blue uniform as before. No extra medals, no fancy decorations. She walked quietly to her chair and sat down. The two women looked at each other across the table. The whole galaxy watched. "High Delegate will answer first," said. "I will ask you questions about human culture. Answer as completely as you can." Nodded. She tried to look confident, but her 4 hands were clenched tightly in her lap. looked at his data pad. First question, what is the most important holiday in human culture? Was silent for a long moment. She knew humans had holidays. She had seen them celebrating sometimes, making noise and eating special foods, but she had never bothered to ask what they were celebrating or why. I do not know, she finally admitted. A murmur went through the crowd. Second question, continued. Name one human artist or musician whose work has influenced their culture. Again, silence. Searched her memory desperately. She had seen humans making art. She had heard their music playing in the background of stations and ships, but she had never stopped to listen. She had never asked who made these things or what they meant. I cannot answer, said. Third question. What event in human history do they consider most important to their identity as a species? Closed her eyes. She felt the weight of thousands of staring eyes. She felt the shame burning in her chest. She had conquered planets. She had led armies. She had negotiated treaties that changed the fate of star systems. But she could not answer simple questions about the beings she had dismissed as servants. I do not know, she whispered. Asked 10 more questions. Could not answer any of them. She did not know how humans raised their children. She did not know what they believed about life after death. She did not know their greatest fears or their highest hopes. By the end, sat in her chair with her head bowed. She had never felt so small in her entire life. Now, said gently, Ambassador Park will answer questions about culture. Straightened in her chair, her face showed no triumph, no mockery, only calm attention. First question, said, what is the most important ceremony in culture? Answered immediately. The joining of arms. When a reaches adulthood, their forearms are painted with symbols representing their family history, their personal values, and their hopes for the future. The ceremony lasts 3 days and involves the entire community. Gasps from the section of the audience, looked up in shock. Second question, name a poet whose work has influenced their culture. Of the Western Mountains, said. She lived 400 years ago during the time of division. Her poems called for peace between the warring factions. Her most famous work, The 4 Hands of Harmony, is still recited at diplomatic gatherings. Paused, then spoke in a different language, the ancient tongue. She recited 8 lines of poetry, her pronunciation nearly perfect. The delegates were stunned. Some of them had tears in their eyes. They had never heard an alien speak their sacred words with such respect. Stared at the human woman. How, she whispered, how do you know this? Looked at her with gentle eyes. I learned. That is what we do. When humans meet a new species, we study them. We learn their languages, their histories, their arts, not because we want to conquer them, because we want to understand them. The questions continued. Answered everyone. She knew about the Civil War and the heroes on both sides. She knew about their religious beliefs and their family structures. She knew about the scientists who had built their first starships. She even knew about's grandmother. Your grandmother was named, said. She was a general during the Unification War. She won many battles, but she is most remembered for something else. After the war ended, she argued that the defeated side should be treated with honor, not punished. She believed that true strength meant offering mercy to those you had beaten. Felt tears forming in her eyes. No one had spoken about her grandmother in years. Her family had grown embarrassed by calls for peace. They thought she had been weak. But this human, this stranger from across the galaxy, remembered her, honored her. Why? Asked, her voice breaking. Why did you learn all this? We have never been friends, we have never been allies. Why do you know so much about my people? Was quiet for a moment. The whole assembly hall waited for her answer. Because you matter, finally said. Every species matters. Every culture, every history, every story. The galaxy is full of amazing beings who have created beautiful things. How could I not want to learn about them? She leaned forward slightly. That is what you never understood about us, High Delegate. You thought humans were weak because we are small and soft and young. But our greatest strength has nothing to do with our bodies. Our greatest strength is our curiosity, our desire to understand, our belief that every being in the universe has something valuable to teach us. The hall was completely silent. Sat frozen in her chair. Everything she had believed about humans, about strength, about power, it was all crumbling inside her mind. She had spent her whole life looking down at other species. She had never bothered to learn about them because she did not think they were worth knowing. And now she saw how wrong she had been. The trial was over. The result was obvious to everyone. But something much more important had happened. For the first time in her life, High Delegate of the Imperium looked at a human with true respect. And slowly, painfully, she began to change. The trial was over. According to ancient tradition, the winner could demand a penalty from the loser, public shame, removal from the council, even exile from the station. The crowd waited to hear what punishment Ambassador Park would choose. Stood up from her chair. She walked slowly around the table until she stood in front of. The tall would not meet her eyes. Her shoulders were slumped, her forearms hanging loose at her sides. She looked defeated in a way that had nothing to do with physical strength. Reached out her hand. Looked up in confusion. "What are you doing?" "I am offering you my hand," said simply. "It is a human gesture. It means friendship, partnership, a new beginning." "I do not understand. You won. You have the right to punish me, to shame me in front of the entire galaxy." "I have that right, yes, but I do not want it." Stared at the small human hand extended toward her. It seemed so fragile compared to her own powerful arms, yet somehow it terrified her more than any weapon. "Why," whispered, "why would you show me kindness after how I treated you, after what I called your people?" Smiled gently. "Because punishment would not change anything. It would only make you angry and bitter. It would make you hate humans even more. What good would that do?" She kept her hand extended. "I would rather have you as an ally than an enemy, High Delegate. I would rather build something together than tear each other apart. That is the human way." The audience watched in silence. Millions of beings across the galaxy held their breath. Slowly, hesitantly, raised one of her 4 hands. She wrapped her purple fingers around small brown ones. The grip was awkward. Human hands and hands were very different shapes, but they made it work. The hall erupted in noise. Cheers from the smaller species who had feared gasps of surprise from the delegation, applause from the humans scattered throughout the crowd. Elder Consul wiped tears from his old eyes. In 40 years on the council, he had never seen anything like this. Did not let go of his hand. Instead, she leaned closer and spoke quietly so only could hear. "I have a proposal for you. Tomorrow the council will officially approve the new shipping corridor. Your people will see it as a defeat. Your enemies at home will use it against you." Nodded bitterly. "My political career is finished." "Not necessarily," said. "What if you were the one who proposed the corridor? What if you announced tomorrow that you had been convinced by the wisdom of cooperation, that the Imperium would generously support free trade for all species?" Frowned, "But that is not what happened. Everyone saw me lose." "Everyone saw you learn. That is different from losing. And if you stand up tomorrow and show that you can change, that you can grow, that will be the greatest victory of your life." Was quiet for a long moment. She looked at the human woman standing before her, so small, so strange, so absolutely certain of her own values. "You would give me credit for your idea. You would let me save face." "I would gain something far more valuable than credit," said. "I would gain you, an ally who truly understands what humans are capable of, someone who will speak for us when others doubt us, someone who knows that we are not weak, we are just strong in different ways." Felt something shifting inside her chest. For her entire life she had believed that the universe was a competition, winners and losers, strong and weak, Us and them. That was how her people thought. That was how she had been raised. But this human was offering her something different. A universe where you could lift someone up instead of pushing them down, where strength meant helping others instead of hurting them, where enemies could become friends. It seemed impossible. It seemed naive. It seemed like the thinking of children who did not understand how the galaxy really worked. And yet, here was Park standing before her, a woman who had been insulted and dismissed as a servant, a woman who had every right to seek revenge, a woman who had chosen kindness instead. Maybe the humans understood something that did not. "I will do it," said quietly. "Tomorrow I will announce my support for the corridor. I will say that cooperation is the path forward." Squeezed her hand, "Thank you." The next day, everything changed. High Delegate stood before the council and gave the most surprising speech of her career. She admitted that she had been wrong. She spoke about what she had learned from the human ambassador. She called for a new era of partnership between and humans. The 12 smaller species who had feared began to relax. Trade flourished along the new open corridor. Ships from every corner of the galaxy traveled freely, carrying goods and ideas and hope. And something else happened too, something quieter but perhaps more important. Others began to change. They saw their High Delegate showing respect to a human and they became curious. They started asking questions. They started learning. Within a year, universities were offering courses in human culture. Within 5 years, human and students were studying together. The galaxy grew a little bit closer. Months after the trial, a young diplomat named approached High Delegate at a reception. Was new to the council, eager and nervous. High Delegate said, "May I ask you something?" "Of course," said. "I have watched you work with the humans. You trust them completely. You defend them against anyone who speaks badly of them. Why?" Was quiet for a moment. She looked across the room where Ambassador Park was chatting with delegates from a dozen different species. The human woman laughed at something the old said. Her eyes were warm. "Do you know how I met Ambassador Park?" asked. "No, High Delegate." "I met her in the cafeteria on her first day at the station. I thought she was a servant. I ordered her to bring me food like she was nothing. I insulted her entire species." His eyes went wide. "What did she do?" "She made me the most beautiful plate of food I had ever seen, prepared exactly the way a noble would expect. And she did it without saying a word of complaint, without correcting my mistake, without making me feel small." Smiled, remembering. Later, when she had every right to humiliate me, she offered me her hand instead. She gave me a chance to change. She believed I could be better, even when I did not believe it myself. "That is remarkable," said. "That is humanity," replied. "That is who they are. They do not win by being the strongest or the richest. They win by caring, by understanding, by believing that everyone, even their enemies, deserves a chance to grow." She looked at the young diplomat seriously. "Learn from them, study their culture, read their books, listen to their music. They have so much to teach us." Nodded slowly, already curious. Across the room, caught eye. The human woman smiled and raised her glass in a small salute. Raised her own glass in return. 2 women from different worlds. One tall and purple with 4 arms, one small and brown with just 2. They had met as strangers, clashed as rivals, and become something neither had expected. Friends. And in that friendship, in that small act of choosing understanding over anger, the galaxy had become a slightly better place. The stars continued to shine, the ships continued to fly, and somewhere in the vast darkness of space, hope continued to grow. Because that was what humans did. They made people believe.